Hello, I'm John Karoulis, and welcome to Insight. Very few people have gotten the opportunity to write "The Phillies won the World Series." David Murphy is one of those lucky people. A LaSalle graduate, he began covering the Phillies this year and couldn't have timed it any better. Welcome, David.
Good to be here.
Before I ask you anything else, are you as surprised as I and many others are that the Phillies actually went all the way and won the World Series this year?
Yeah, I think without a doubt. I think you're surprised when anybody wins the World Series who's not, Boston or New York or one of these teams. But yeah, it really blew my mind. If you would ask me midway through the season if they were a World Series, championship caliber team, I think you would have had to say no, just from the way they had played to that point. There were some, pitching issues they were dealing with, but they really just made it all happen when it counted. And I think while I was surprised, it wasn't out of the question. I knew they had the potential, but anytime a team, especially from the city, can pull off a feat like that, there's some degree of amazement, I guess you'd say.
Trepidation.
Yeah.
Okay. You were hired by the Daily News this year. How'd that go about? How'd that come about? And how did you probably straight to Florida to cover spring training?
Yeah. Well, I was actually I'd been working for the St. Petersburg Times for 3.5 years. I covered high school sports down there and a variety of other kind of general assignment topics, arena football for one. And before that, I'd spent about a year in South Carolina covering a small Division I school called Coastal Carolina in Myrtle Beach. And I'd been in Florida for 3.5 years, and I got a call from a friend of mine who's in the business up here who said, hey, the Daily News might be looking for a Phillies writer. I had a relationship with Pat McClune, LaSalle grad.
Paper's managing editor.
Yeah, he was a sports editor at the time. Now he's the managing editor. And we had a few talks, and he encouraged me to send some of my clips and writing samples in, and I did, and interviewed, and there were a few other candidates. But
so they called you for an interview. Step one, did that surprise you?
Yeah, I don't know. It all moved pretty fast. I knew. I wasn't surprised I got an interview because I had a relationship with them before, and I assumed they would at least give me that courtesy. But I wasn't sure if it was just a courtesy interview or if it was actually something that I was going to be taken seriously for. But they were great. They were up front. They said, hey, you're a serious candidate, and it worked out.
What'd they ask you? I mean, obviously they knew you could write.
Right. The big thing with baseball is just day-to-day deadline pressure. Because the games start at 7 o'clock at night, and a lot of times don't wrap up until 10:30, and our deadline is 10:30. And so the ability to write a lot of copy in a little time is number one. So there's a lot of talk about that. Obviously they wanted to know some of the news I'd broken in the past and stories I'd written, and I was young and inexperienced to get a major league baseball beat, so there was some degree of trepidation on their part when it came to that, and that was addressed. But apparently I told them all the right things.
Do you remember the day they called you and said, "Come up here and write for us"?
Yeah, I do actually. It was I don't know what specific day it was, but I know I was getting ready to go out and cover a high school girls basketball game, and. It wasn't a great high school girls basketball game, but just before I went out the door, I got the call, and it's funny because Pat McClune said, "Hey, you got the job here." It was a big job for me. It was a big step up, so I was pretty excited. I was more excited than anything about coming back home and being able to move back to Philly and work for a paper I'd grown up reading. And every day on my way down to the comm center for classes, I picked up a copy of the Daily News and read the sports section, and really had a lot of respect for the writers in that paper, and so it was a pretty, I was pretty excited about it. But he said, we want you to come up here and work for us, but here's your first assignment. You're not allowed to tell anybody for 3 days, because they wanted to call the other candidates and tell them. So I had to kind of sit on my sit on my hands and bite my tongue for 3 days, which was fairly difficult. But it worked out.
Did you come back to Philly and get settled, or did you go to Florida first to cover spring training?
It was a whirlwind. I got the job, turned in my 2 weeks the next day, and then two weeks from that day was February 1st. So I spent I finished out my time with St. Pete and, looked for apartments from down in Florida, which is difficult because, you're looking for them in Florida and they're in Pennsylvania. So, I flew my brother down, my younger brother. He's 24 and had just gotten out of the Marines, and flew him down and we rented a truck, and he drove my car and I drove the truck, and we loaded all my stuff into the truck and, drove for 23 hours to Pennsylvania, and I got to Pennsylvania and unloaded all the stuff into my parents' garage, and 5 days later I had to be back on a plane to Florida for spring training. So yeah, it was it was pretty nuts. It was a very very tumultuous 5 days, I guess you would say. Yeah. But I think I finally caught my breath.
Okay. Spring training, the players. Mm-hmm. How long did it take you to, quote, fit in or get comfortable with the players, them to get comfortable to you?
Well, I think it's still an ongoing process. I'm competing against guys on the beat. Most of them have been there at least 4 or 5 years. One guy's been there 12 or 13 years. One guy's been there 5 or 6 years, and so you come in and it's an environment where there's already some degree of distrust because you're a member of the media, and so it takes some time to break down those barriers, and I would say they're still being broken down. But I think, by the end of spring training, because I was there every day, it was a little, I noticed, myself being able to establish some relationships with people on the team, but yeah, I don't think it's ever, a completed process. I think I think you talk to guys who are in the business 25 years and they're still kind of, don't necessarily feel completely like they're in. Do you
remember your first story? I would ask that question, wouldn't I?
Yeah, I don't think I do, to be honest with you.
One thing that I noticed is that in addition to writing for the paper, you did a blog,
right,
which was not just a recycled version of your story that day.
Right.
So in fact, you're doing 2 jobs at the same.
Right.
Must have been exhausting.
Yeah, I hope my boss is watching. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, the blog is it's funny because I spend the bulk of my time on the newspaper, and pour a lot of effort into that story, and that's kind of our number one goal. But the blog has just taken off. I mean, it's gone from nothing to one of the more popular blogs on Philly.com right now, and it's funny how many people, when I talk to people out in public, they'll always bring up the blog and they'll rarely bring up the stuff I write for the newspaper. So I like it. It's a great outlet. I think I think there's a delicate balance of that you have to strike in terms of what you should get into on the blog versus what you should get into on the paper, what's appropriate for the blog, what's appropriate for the paper. And I think it's important not just to regurgitate, one into the other. So it's been a lot of fun, but you're right, it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work, but I love it. Yeah.
More with David Murphy and covering the Phillies during their championship season when we return.
And freed countries. They've raised our flag and our hope. They've been called leathernecks. They've been called devil dogs. But above all, they're called Marines.
Hi, I'm Eddie Montgomery.
And I'm Troy Gentry.
As Montgomery Gentry, we have traveled all over this great country, living out our dreams, playing music.
The road has taken us from small town county fairs in Iowa to huge arenas in California.
No matter where we go, we are reminded of our blessings and how proud we are to be Americans.
But most importantly, we're proud of our men and women serving in the military nationwide, throughout the world. Without them, we wouldn't have the freedoms we enjoy right now.
Half of young Americans can't locate economic powers like Japan and India. 20% can't even find the Pacific Ocean. Without geography, our children aren't ready for the world. Understanding connections between people and places is critical. So we created mywonderfulworld.org. Go there now for your free action kit. Help kids understand their world today so they can succeed in it tomorrow.
You don't have to knock yourself out to prevent diabetes. Get real. If you're over 45 and overweight, you can prevent diabetes. Lose 5 to 7% of your body weight, get 30 minutes of physical activity 5 days a week, and eat healthy. Take the first step. Talk to your healthcare provider. Prevent diabetes.
Welcome back. We're talking with David Murphy, LaSalle graduate, who had the incredible timing and good fortune earned to cover the Phillies this year for the Philadelphia Daily News. A couple of basic questions. Did you always want to be a sports writer? Is that what you wanted to do?
Yeah, not always. I initially wanted to be an NBA player. And that didn't work out for whatever reason. I would have been making a lot more money now, so maybe I chose the wrong path. But when it became apparent that I was not going to be able to make a living playing basketball, so right around the 8th or 9th grade, I began, as kids these days are kind of hammered over the head earlier and earlier with what they want to do with their life, and I was kind of, one of those kids who took it seriously and was really kind of spent a lot of time worrying about what my lot in life was. And I went, I loved sports, and I figured if I couldn't be a part of sports as a player or coach, I would love to be a part of sports in some other capacity. And my first thought was to be a physical therapist / trainer, and then in freshman English class we had to write an essay on an event, and I wrote about a sporting event that I'd attended, an Eagles game, and I realized I could write a little bit, and I could write about sports, and I figured, hey, why not be a sports writer?
And you started when you came here writing for our student newspaper, The
Right.
Collegian.
Right.
Football program, basketball program, good opportunity, right?
Yeah, it was a good. It was very good. I wrote for The Collegian for my freshman year, and then was a sports editor my sophomore and junior year. And it was great. It was a good chance to cover some Division I sports, yet not kind of be consumed by it like you would be at a bigger school. It gave me a chance to, because it's a small school, it's easy to find stories and kind of the human interest stories that I like to write, and it was a very good outlet for that.
You have to help me with this, but you did a story about Bill Manlove,
Right.
When he retired, cleaning out his office on his last day on campus. And you went back to your office, wrote an hour, and you wound up winning a major award for this. Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I don't know how major. Yeah, it was the Philadelphia Sports Writers Association gives out a yearly award for the best college sports writing in the city, and I won that, and it was great. It was a great honor. It was one of the highlights of my my young career for sure. It was pretty cool. I still have the plaque. It's big. It's nice. It's big.
Well, not saying, but there are daily college student papers,
Right.
that have lots of big sports. So
Right.
you went mano a mano with them, and
Yeah. I don't think it matters, and even early on in my professional career, I've always said it doesn't matter what size paper you write for, or what outlet you write for, or even what you cover. You can find good stories and you can tell them, and the paper that the Collegian is printed on is the same kind of paper that the New York Times is printed on, so, you should never let the outlet or the size of the outlet stop you. Some of the best pieces of sports writing I've ever read have come from, alt weeklies in San Francisco and just obscure publications. It doesn't matter. Good writing is good writing.
Very true. One other experience you had was an internship with the Philadelphia Eagles, which almost didn't happen. You phoned and
Right.
finally got an appointment. And tell us what happened then.
Yeah, I was a senior in high school, and it was right around. I'd kind of decided I wanted to be a sports writer, and I'd spent some time writing articles for various fantasy football websites and the like, and just pretty much anything on the internet I could find to get some experience. And I had a good friend of mine and a good mentor of mine named Dave Spadaro, who is the I forget what his official
PR
title is
title.
now. Pretty much he's the
Webmaster, yeah.
editor of PhiladelphiaEagles.com and Eagles Digest, the Phillies, the Eagles, publications online and in print. And I had found his email at one point. I'd sent him an email and expressed to him some interest in doing something to get some writing experience. And he kind of ducked me for a long time, and I didn't realize he was ducking me at the time. I was kind of young and naive, and I figured when he said call me back tomorrow, he meant call me back tomorrow. So I kept on calling him, and he hooked me up, and I spent that first summer, my senior year of high school, driving back and forth from my home in the Poconos to training camp at Lehigh University, and just kind of grew from there. And I worked for PhiladelphiaEagles.com all throughout college, and Eagles Digest all throughout college, and it was a great experience.
But wasn't there a time when the interview almost didn't happen?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that was the. I mean, at one point, so David finally said, "All right, come down to the vet and meet with me, and we'll try to figure out something for you to do." And I got down there, and it was actually the same day I was scheduled to tour Villanova, during my admissions process, and got down there, and David called in sick that day, so we drove all the way down. My father and I had driven all the way down from the Poconos, and didn't even get the interview or the chat. But all's well that ends well, I guess, as they say, right?
Right. Okay. More about David Murphy and the Phillies when we come back.
Future of our people is threatened by diabetes, but we can fight it by controlling our blood sugar.
I choose healthy foods.
I exercise every day and keep my blood sugar close to normal.
I always take my medication.
Control your diabetes because our young ones look up to you. We must take charge for future generations. Control your diabetes for life. Call 1-800-438-5383.
Should I be planning better for retirement?
Isn't it about time to renew my driver's license? If I go back to school, can I get a student loan? Will Medicare cover tattoo removal? Can Social Security cover...
Relax, Tony! Go to firstgov.gov! They've got all the answers!
The answers to all your government questions are always right there.
Can we get some pancakes?
Just log on or email firstgov.gov.
And now, another adventure with Savings Man.
Look, honey, it's my Social Security statement.
Oh, gosh, how are we going to retire on that?
Never fear, young savers.
It's Savings Man.
You need to save more. You'll need this.
Oh, the ballpark estimate worksheet.
That's right. Get it at choosetosave.org and find out how much you'll need to save for your future.
Gee, thanks, Savings Man.
No, thank you.
So visit choosetosave.org and stay tuned for more Savings Man.
Estoy haciendo voluntario desde que tenía 16 años. Mi padre siempre dice, no esperes que les pidan. Mira alrededor y haga. Hoy quiero inspirar a otros. ¿Será sirviendo un alimento a los que necesitan más o ayudar a un vecino?
Adelante, inspirar. Cambiemos el mundo. Llama al 1-800-424-8867 hoy o visita www.getinvolved.gov.
Welcome back. Talking with David Murphy, LaSalle graduate, who was now and still is the beat reporter for the Philadelphia Daily News and got to cover the Phillies from day one to the parade, as it were. David, people probably don't realize you have to travel with the team and how much that takes a toll on your own personal life. What's it like being on the road? Different hotels and different stories.
I'll say this: it's like nothing I've ever done before. But I like it. But it can, yeah, you're right. It can get to be a drain on your social life at times. It's kind of the running joke. The running joke among sports writers is that if it's not a Marriott, there's not going to be a sports writer in the house, because Marriott has a great points program for frequent travelers, and they have a nice little handy account tracker, and it shows you how many nights in hotels you've spent. And I think I've spent 85 nights since April 1st in hotels. So yeah, it's a lot of mini shampoo bottles. I don't think I'll ever have to buy shampoo again. A lot of little soap bars and body lotions. So it's nice. A lot of the perks. Those are the perks of the job that you don't see.
Right. Were you able to get a day off when the Phillies were home because you traveled so much?
Yeah. I mean, I would estimate I probably covered 100 and. I mean, if there's 162 games during the regular season, I probably covered, 135, 140 of them. First of all, because I write for the Daily News, we don't publish on Sundays because we have a agreement with the Inquirer. So the Inquirer publishes a Sunday paper. We don't publish Sunday, which means I don't have to write anything on Saturday because we have no paper on Sunday. So a lot of times I would take Saturday off and not even go to the ballpark. And yeah, I mean, if we're coming back from a 10-day road trip, a lot of times I'll take the next day off just to kind of unpack and do some laundry and get my bearings straight. But yeah, I mean, it's manageable.
Before you got here, Charlie Manuel was not the most popular manager in Phillies history. And yet, he who laughs last laughs best. What was it like working with him?
I tell this to anybody who asks. Charlie's a great guy. He's a stand-up guy. He's he's a good human being. Very easy to work with. In terms of there's a lot of managers and coaches out there who aren't necessarily the easiest human beings in the world to deal with, and Charlie's great. I mean, he's everything that you could ask for as a beat writer. He's accessible. He's as honest as he can be. He's very easy to work with.
Story the public kept hearing was that his players loved him and loved playing for him. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I think I think that can get overblown sometimes because I think in the end, especially in baseball, players play for themselves and they play for their teammates, and I don't know that I don't know that the players would play any harder for someone else, for Charlie than they would for someone else. But what he is he's an excellent, manager from, as far as managing people. He knows when to, massage a player's ego. He knows when to kind of give him a what for, and he knows how to lay down the law. I think he's a very good people person. He's got a very good radar, a very good social radar. And he's a likable person. I mean, guys like Charlie, and they do like playing for him. But I think it gets overblown sometimes how much of an actual impact that has on the field.
Right. One point, with not too many games left, the Phillies are 3.5 behind the Mets for the division and 4 for the Brewers. And I have to admit, I jumped off the bandwagon. At that point, did you think they were done?
I'll be honest. I didn't think that they would win the division. I still thought they had a chance at the wild card because they had at that point in time they had a 4-game series coming up with the Brewers. They'd handled the Brewers
4 straight.
Yeah, they'd handled the Brewers beforehand, and I kind of liked the way they matched up against the Brewers, and I liked CC Sabathia wasn't going to pitch in that series, and I had a feel at that point in time I started to get the feeling that they might. All they need to do if they sweep this Brewers series, it's a whole new ball game, and they did, But I would say a little early, right around that point in time. I was a little skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
But then Ryan Howard just started swinging the bat, and that was it.
All right. We could have had our Greek tragedy, Game 5.
Right.
All right. How upset were the players? The game was suspended. How upset were you?
Well, I was upset because I had to come back.
You could have written a World Series story that day.
Exactly. It was just a weird day. It was just bizarre. I remember riding to the park that day with fellow Salle alum and current Philadelphia Inquirer columnist John Gonzalez, and we both live in the same general area of the city, so we carpooled it in, and I remember talking to him and saying, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think they're really going to win? And we were like, well, if either they won and we got to write a great game story about them winning the World Series, or they lost and we were going to Tampa, and we thought that, going to Tampa was the worst case scenario the next day. Well, little did we know that, we'd be coming back, 2 days later for more Game 5. The players were furious. I don't know. In hindsight, I think they realized they really couldn't be furious at anybody because, what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
But nobody would talk to us after that game, and because they didn't want to say anything that they would regret.
Mm-hmm.
But being in that clubhouse, there were some very, 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 very upset professional athletes,
right, to say the least,
and some upset professional sports writers.
Game 5 is resumed, and it's the 8th and 9th inning. The Phillies closer has a perfect season. So somewhere around that time, you must have started thinking what your lead was going to be, and the next paragraph to write a World Series story. I guess every writer lives for a moment like that. Did that enter your mind, or just focus on the job?
I really like covering big events, and I like covering success in big events. It's success and failure are equally fascinating topics to write about. But there's a saying in our business about sometimes stories just write themselves, and you really don't have to think about it. So just write what you see, and try to capture the moment. And I just waited until we weren't on heavy deadline pressure, so I just waited till the final out and kind of just wrote what I saw and wrote what I felt, and there wasn't a lot of thinking. It kind of when you're covering a big event, if you just kind of let the event do the talking, you'll be in good shape.
Okay, David, thanks much for being here.
Yeah, it was great being here. Great being here.
See you next time on Insight.